to another episode of 5 Minutes with Jesus and Jesse. Today we are continuing on with my testimony, and we are starting off with where am I at now? This past year has really been a year of sanctification. What I mean by that is things that I used to enjoy and tell myself were okay had started becoming not enjoyable. And I started to see less and less of my old self and more of this changed behavior. My prayers for a long time had been to stop doing things that were like seemingly bad or frowned upon just because they were bad. So it really started with like not wanting to cuss anymore. And then I started becoming aware of the problems that drinking usually brought. And I would use the excuse that I don't drink that much or that often, so it was okay. But really, I started hating how drinking made me feel. I started hating definitely how I felt the next day. I looked at my kids and I remember being a kid and hating seeing adults drinking. I just thought it was dumb. And my kids are now watching my example, and that's not the example that I wanted to be setting for them. It was something that I just didn't like, and I wanted to be able to drive whenever I wanted. I wanted my kids to feel safe. I wanted to feel better the next day. I wanted the health benefits, all the things. And so my prayers went from let's stop doing something because it's bad to wanting to stop because it didn't please God. Sanctification is a change of heart, of your mind, of your body. And wanting to do the right thing because it is wrong is great. But until you have this change, this sanctification, it's merely doing something just because it's right or wrong or frowned upon or it's what you should be doing. It has to turn into wanting to do something because there's a change within you. Your desires have changed, your idea of fun has changed, your heart has changed, and you want to be obedient to what God has called you to and who He has called you to now. And I kept going back and forth. I would have one or two drinks. I would drink with a safe circle of friends. Again, we're talking like a glass of wine or two. And I could probably count on one hand the number of times I drank last year. But that's not the point. And really, that's just more excuses. I don't do it that often. It's not that much. And Paul talks in Romans 7, he says, I don't understand what I do. For what I want to do, I do not do. I do what I hate. And this is me. I was convicted. I knew what I needed to do to be obedient, and I just simply wasn't doing it. And I kept doing what I hated. And this really started that sanctification process in me, because I'm not strong enough in my own power to overcome the sin that is always going to be at work within me. And my prayer started changing to like, Lord, please give me strength to overcome this temptation. Take the desire away from me. Take the taste away from me. Let me want to please you so much that it outweighs any desire I have to do something worldly. And I kept wrestling back and forth and making allowances. But what I realized is that when you're convicted of something and you continue to do it, that's still sin. And there are so many scriptures that said, don't be drunk in the Bible. But they were always drinking wine in the Bible. Again, so I was just justifying stuff in my head. But here's the verse that got me, the one that really got through to me, James 4:17. If you do what you know not to do, it is sin. It's very black and white. It's very simple. If you do what you know not to do, it's sin. So if I'm doing what I know I shouldn't be doing, it's sin. And while I might be convicted of something, someone else may not be convicted of that same thing, and that's okay. But when God convicts you of something and you continue to do what He's told you not to do, that's sin. So I started using every excuse I could to not drink. I would say I needed to drive home. I would dump out drinks that people gave me when they weren't looking. I would even bring like sodas and put them in like a koozie cup so you couldn't see that it wasn't an alcoholic beverage, and I would just be drinking like a Dr. Pepper or whatever. I would bring like sparkling grape juice, which I still love. And honestly, when I have that like, oh, something bubbly and just that like I want a glass of wine, I'll go drink sparkling grape juice. Like, it's great. Love it. So I started giving all these excuses because I felt like saying I just don't want to drink anymore wasn't ever a good enough reason for people. It just seemed like it wasn't ever good enough. And sorry, I was looking at the time. I usually record my videos on Mondays, and this week I didn't record on Monday because we had some stuff going on, and oddly enough, it's funny how God works, my reading Tuesday morning was in 1 Peter, and I wanted to read these verses to you that would not be included in this episode if I had done it on Monday. But 1 Peter chapter 4, starting in verse 3, you have had enough in the past of evil things that godless people enjoy. Their immorality and their lust, their feasting and drunkenness and wild parties and their terrible worship of idols. Of course, your former friends are surprised when you no longer plunge into the flood of wild and destructive things they do. So they slander you. And what started out as this like weird and awkward conversation that I just tried to avoid by pretending I was drinking or making up an excuse or whatever, it now has become the norm. If you see Jessie there, you know she's not gonna be drinking. If you need a ride home, call Jessie. We all know she's sober. And it's not really even given much thought anymore. And the great thing about that is that you can change people's beliefs about you. So I really hope that this can be encouraging to you, that if you're trying to change a behavior or do something on your own, sin's gonna win. It's only by His strength and His power are you ever going to overcome temptation, because we live in a broken world, because we live in sin most of the time. The ways of the world are usually sin, and it's around us all the time. And if you're wanting to change a behavior for the sake of just doing something right or because it's bad, then be prepared to give into the temptation and to succumb to the ways of the world, because the peer pressure is going to get to you. The awkward conversation is going to get to you. The feeling uncomfortable, it's going to get to you, and you're going to give in. But if you want to change a behavior in obedience to God, be prepared to be sanctified and be prepared to be set apart, because you are going to be the person He's called you to be if you desire to live in obedience with Him and rely on His strength and His grace and His mercy to help you overcome the sin that is always just going to tempt us. So I hope that this is encouraging to you, that whatever thing you may be struggling with, you can do it, but you're going to need God's help. So please just start changing those prayers and ask for that change in heart, that it's not just doing something because it's the right thing to do, but it's doing something because it's what God has called you to do.